Education about the dangers of impaired driving continues to increase, but yet the problem has not been solved yet. Joining me now to discuss this in greater detail is Anita Huchala. She's the president of the Lethbridge and area chapter of MAD, or Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Anita, welcome to Bridge City News.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Now, Anita, before we get into the nuts and bolts of what MAD is all about, tell me about those amazing images behind you. Are those victims of drunk drivers?
They are victims and survivors. This is what we call our memory wall, and we take this to many of our events and show it on display. So it kind of is a hard message that hits home with many people to see the number of faces that we do have on our wall.
Now, can you explain the focus of your organization, Mothers Against Drunk Driving? What kinds of services do you offer specifically here in Southern Alberta?
Well, first and foremost, our mission is to stop impaired driving and support the victims of this violent crime. The services that our chapter can offer here in Southern Alberta are victim and survivor support, and that's first and foremost, like I said. So we can offer court accompaniment. We help them with their victim impact statement. We also answer many questions because going through the court process is very difficult, trying, and time consuming. We also offer youth services here. So we have different presentations that are geared towards elementary and the junior high, as well as the high schools, to also educate them on the dangers of consuming alcohol and or drugs, and then the dangers of getting behind the wheel during that. And then we also have several other things that we do. We have public awareness and education programs that are out there that we're always educating the public as to be aware of the dangers of drinking and driving.
Anita, how do you really console or comfort somebody whose family is the victim of a drunk driver, somebody who was killed, let's say a mother, a son, a daughter, an innocent child? We've seen that time and time again by a drunk driver. How do you console and comfort that family? What do you even say to them? Where do you begin?
There's really nothing right or wrong to say. Every situation is different. The best you can do is be there for that family. One of the first things that I do when I'm meeting a family for the first time is ask them to tell me about their loved one that they have lost. I want to hear about who they were. What did they mean to the community? What did they mean to the family? What kind of work did they do? And that way it puts it a little bit more of a personal curve on it. And it also helps offer us some information so we know how better to serve this family.
Let's also talk about the driver involved in this collision. Chances are that person is devastated on the inside. You know, they may face criminal charges on top of that, but they have to live with the fact that they killed another person with their vehicle.
Right. Right. That's also very difficult. We usually don't step forward to help them or anything like that because we are there for the victims of this. But there's several agencies here in the Southern Alberta area that can help counsel them to get through their grief as well, because it is very difficult. And it's not only difficult for the impaired driver, but it's also difficult for their families to have to realize that somebody in their family has chosen to get behind the wheel and has caused a crash.
So, Anita, where are we at in Canada? Have impaired driving incidents actually decreased? Are we improving at all?
I'd like to think personally that yes, we are improving. We're getting the message out there. We're getting more instruments for our police services to be using to help detect impaired drivers quicker and get them off the road. With the implementation of Bill 21 recently that just rolled out on December 1st, it does form some harsher penalties that the officers can be enforcing on impaired drivers.
Anita, do you have any stats whatsoever about how many people are killed or injured annually from impaired drivers?
From a MAT standpoint, with several years of research and statistics that we have, our odds are looking at on an average that 4 people are killed and 175 are injured every single day across Canada. And those numbers are absolutely staggering.
Now, we've talked about people who are drinking and driving. What about those who are maybe addicted to opioids or high on other drugs, methamphetamine, fentanyl, or anything else, who's also impaired when they get behind the wheel?
Correct. I think one of the firmest statements I can say is impaired. Whether you're taking the alcohol, whether you're taking the drugs, or even prescription drugs, we are seeing a rise at times in different age brackets of people who are prescribed opioids, whether it be from a surgery or a lengthy illness that they're dealing with and stuff. and they take that and then choose to get behind the wheel without realizing how impaired they may be. So I feel that it's always the best thing is to plan ahead. Plan ahead. Think about what your actions are, and always plan ahead.
Anita, let's talk about the statistics involving female or women drivers getting behind the wheel while they're impaired.
We are seeing at times a number go up of women that are receiving opioid medication for a number of various conditions. And without even thinking, they're also getting behind the wheel, maybe to slip down to the mall to do a bit of shopping or slip out and get the groceries. And again, they're not realizing how they may be impaired with their driving. And it's an increase that we see not only just women, men are doing it as well. But because of this situation, our numbers are constantly changing with that. So we have to take into consideration the different medications that we can be taking that.
You know, I have seniors in my family who are suffering from painful conditions like fibromyalgia, osteoarthritis, and they take the opioids at the same time. They get behind the wheel, so they can be impaired too, is what you're saying.
Right. Right. Without possibly knowing it. It's a simple thing as when we have a cold or allergies. There is drugs in there that can help or not help. They help the situation, but they also form impairment on us, and we may not be at our highest alertness that we need to be.
Now, you're right. A lot of that cold and cough and flu medicine, a lot of times is quite high in alcohol content. So you take that and you get behind the wheel, you're right, you're impaired. Now, one of the ways you're trying to get the message across against drinking and driving or just impaired driving is Project Red Ribbon. Anita, what is that all about?
Correct. Well, I'm going to show you. We have one of our red ribbons with us, so I brought this out here. So we hand these out. We ask people to tie them onto their antennas, their purse, their backpack, anywhere, even their keys, as a sober reminder to not drive impaired. And as well, we use the red ribbon to also honor the victims and survivors of impaired driving.
Now, fundraising at this time is very difficult due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but I understand that you actually launched the Mad Red Ribbon Coffee with Cuppers. Can you tell me a bit about that?
We did. So just like every other nonprofit here in Southern Alberta, we were struggling to get our message out there, be out there with the public and be handing out our red ribbons. And we looked into some different fundraising ideas and came up with Cuppers Coffee. And so they have two specialty blends that they do for us, a medium and a dark. And then you just ask for whichever way you would like to have it, ground or whole bean. And 25% of those proceeds do come back to MAD. We've only been doing it with them for a couple of weeks, and I think currently we're at about 30 pounds of coffee that we've sold in just 2 weeks. So we're pretty excited and pretty happy with the results so far.
Anita, if I have a friend, a neighbor, or a relative who drives impaired, what's the very first thing that I should do?
The very first thing is call 911. That is the first thing that you should do. Never ever confront the person, never try to stop them from getting behind the wheel. Call 911, take as much information as you can, and then assess the situation. You never ever want to put yourself in danger.
Now, we talked about driving while under the influence of alcohol or maybe opioids. What about the challenges of driving after using cannabis? Do you think Canadians are aware of the dangers of this?
I think there's been a great amount of education out there for us to learn from. They do recommend that you wait anywhere between 4 to 6 hours after consuming cannabis before you get behind the wheel. But I'd like to think that it's a same thing as when you're consuming alcohol. The best place to be is at home and then consume whatever your choice is and stay there instead of being out on the roads.
You know, it's really interesting as well as I've talked to police officers here in the city who say that a lot of people consume so much alcohol and then the next morning they think, oh, it's completely left my system, and they leave and go to work or they're out driving. It's still in their system depending upon how much alcohol, and they're still considered impaired. I guess we have to consider that as well, even the next morning.
Definitely. It's one of those things that you always need to make sure that you've allowed your body enough time to process either the drugs or the alcohol and have your system clear before you do get behind the wheel.
Anita, I know this Christmas season is very different from past years because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the restrictions. But if you do end up at a party, there's some booze flying around, can you remind viewers about planning ahead and how important that is to prevent impaired driving?
Yes, it definitely is. So we always say, plan ahead. So that means that you can either call a taxi, call Uber, call a friend that is sober or a family member, or if at all possible, you can stay where you are. But if you don't have a plan before you go out and then you start to consume alcohol or drugs, you may not be making those best decisions. And then that's when we find people are getting into trouble. So that's why we always really enforce the plan ahead.
Is Mothers Against Drunk Driving Canada in need of volunteers? And if so, how does someone get involved?
Always. We're always looking for volunteers, whether you want to give an hour, a day, a lifetime, we'll take it all. The easiest way, we've just rolled out here lately, is that you can go online to mad.ca and choose volunteering, and then you can pick the region that you are in and then fill out the volunteer form online, and that comes directly, if you're doing it for the Lethbridge area, that comes directly to me, and then I can be in touch with you and we can take it from there.
2020 has been a very challenging year. Many people are saying, good riddance, get rid of it. What about 2021? Let's talk about some of the special plans that you have set up with MAD.
You bet. I'm always an optimist, so I'm really hoping that 2021 is always on, kind of the even keel, and we're back out there doing our regular events and stuff. We had rolled out a crash car this summer, and we did it. It's kind of like a roving billboard, so it is a crash vehicle that was not involved in an impaired crash, and on the side of it says, "Please don't drink and drive." And we'll be rolling that back out this spring at a few locations throughout southern Alberta as a reminder to not drive impaired, as well as we're really hoping, we're kind of in the planning stages, but we're really hoping that we're going to be getting back out there with all the different communities that surround us at these small parades and different events and stuff, so that we can be chatting with people, get them the red ribbons that they so want for their vehicles and stuff, and just continue to keep everybody educated and have them think twice before they make that decision to get behind the wheel.
Anita, we always hear the tragic stories involving drunk drivers and their victims. Let's talk about success stories, or maybe a feel-good story with Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Maybe a story that you can share with our viewers.
I guess I try to think of, there was one classroom that I was doing a discussion in. There was a young girl in that classroom who really wasn't paying attention to our presentation. It was like she couldn't wait for us to kind of get it done and over with. And then I started to share a little bit more statistics and show some people that were closer to her age. And the principal of the school made the comment that he noticed that this young girl sat up in school and started to really pay attention to the talk I was giving. And when I was done, she came over and thanked me for sharing. And that right there really kind of warmed my heart, because I was hoping that our message got through to her. She'll think twice about this. And right there, we may have just saved a life without knowing it.
That's beautiful. You never know whose heart you're really going to touch. Isn't that right, Anita?
That's 100%. 100%.
Anita Huchala is the president of the Lethbridge area chapter of MAD, or Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Anita, keep up the great work, and God bless you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.